Subscribe to our YouTube channel for in-depth interviews of India Inc. and press the bell icon so that you do not miss our updates.
Hello and welcome to Nirmal, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Hiral. Dadia. We have with us Captain G.R. Gopinath, founder of Air Deccan, pioneer of low-cost aviation in India, retired captain of the Indian Army, and author of Simply Fly. Captain G.R. Gopinath has worn many hats: an officer in the Indian Army, a silk farmer, and an entrepreneur. As we all know, he's launched the first budget airline, which is Air Deccan. Welcome to the show, Mr. Gopinath, and it's a pleasure to speak to you as well. And happy Diwali and happy Dhanteras to you and your family.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Happy Diwali to all of you and your viewers.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Let me ask you my first question. I mean, before we get onto your journey as an entrepreneur, you created an airline which actually broke social barriers about class, about creed, because at that point in time, traveling by air was almost taken as okay, it's a means of transport of the rich. Not everyone can afford it. But the moment you launched Air Deccan, that gap was automatically filled in. What gave you this thought and why Air Deccan?
Uh, you know, I was already had broken the kind of a barrier for helicopters.
Hmm.
In '95, an army colleague of mine, Captain Samuel, and I had just come back from my farming time after my army career,
Hmm.
and I had moved to Bangalore for my children's education for my farm. And I met a friend of mine, army colleague of mine. Uh, Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Go on.
Yeah. Army colleague of mine, Captain Samuel, who was an outstanding army helicopter pilot who had flown in Jammu and Kashmir, a buddy of mine during the war and in the academy. And in those days, it was almost impossible to hire a helicopter for, I'm not saying the common man, for anybody who wanted to hire it for either tourism or if you wanted to visit some places, industrial sites, unless you were a Birla or a Dalmia. It was the old world. Even Mukesh Ambani's family did not have a helicopter at that time. And so I got this idea of making the helicopter available because of the fact that the reforms were underway. So this thought of India on the way to reforms after Chinese communism embracing capitalism, the socialist Russia collapsing many states, and hundreds of pilots without jobs from the army, air force, and navy. And not a single helicopter company in the south. There were about 10 or 12 which were operating. Rest of them were all basically registered but not flying, and they were largely helicopters for the ego of this chairman of the company and also for political patronage. They were not focusing on the customer. And I realized that these reforms were inexorable and unstoppable. And this idea gripped me when I was actually in China. When I was looking at the Chinese expansion, I said India cannot remain now in isolation. And then Captain Sam and I, decided on this idea to set up a helicopter company for various applications. So my first ad was dial a chopper. And my second ad was, if it's in the map, we'll get you there. And so it took us 3 years to get our license, but we did not stop. We kept pursuing it. We did not give up. And we all know that there is corruption. We all know that there is bureaucratic problems and the huge red tape, which ties up and tires up anybody. But we did not stop. Relentlessly we pursued it. And one day somebody will say, okay, I can take money from somebody else, some other industrialist, but let me, give the license to him. Just 3 lines. The government has no objection to start your airline. That's all. That's it. And to get that, it took us 3 years. So ultimately, persistence pays. Persistence pays. It may delay you, it may deter you, but it cannot stop you, because somebody, in a very, you could say superstitious way, always, throws a line for you to catch, like in the Draupadi's case. If there's commitment and if there's sincerity, somebody will open the door for you. So both during the Congress regime and the BJP regime and the Janata Dal, when Devegowda was the Prime Minister, somehow it was our luck, providence, and our hard work. We did not pay, so we got the helicopter license, and then when the helicopter company grew in 2002, I was suddenly looking at a different India. I was seeing it, but I was not able to, get it. I could touch it and feel it. So when I was flying in the choppers over the villages, because India, our helicopters were all over India. It was there in Himachal, it was there in Rajasthan. We were giving the helicopters to the politicians. So we actually opened up helicopters for the first time, where we broke the barrier for politicians to hire helicopters. Though, of course, that barrier is still not broken in states like Kerala, or Tamil Nadu so much, because they are somehow, they feel it goes against them to hire helicopters, especially in Kerala being a communist state. But all over India, helicopters, we were giving our helicopters, and we became the largest helicopter company. And it also opened up the doors for corporates to hire us at the drop of a hat. And at that time, when I was flying in the countryside, I found that almost every part of India, it was the early days of the Doordarshan, getting the sideline. We had in those days, we had only 2 channels before I started the helicopter company, Doordarshan 1 and Doordarshan 2. And there's a famous R.K. Lakshman cartoon. If you put on Doordarshan 1, you saw Indira Gandhi. If you put on Doordarshan 2, it was Rajiv Gandhi or Sanjay Gandhi. So this television had transformed India. And going on the helicopters, even in a remote village, I could see, something, shining. And when I flew lower, we found that there were helicopter dish antennas. Some entrepreneur in a village had collected 1,000 rupees from each household and connected television. And for about 200 rupees, even in 96, 97, in 2001, 2002, for 200 rupees, a villager could see at least about 20, 25 channels. And what were these channels showing? In between the news and the movies, they were asking you to buy, Hero Honda motorcycle, or a Colgate toothpaste, or Fair and Lovely cream to make even girls in the villages to buy, cosmetics, and to buy refrigerators, to buy, consumer goods. So it is a new India. I realized that there was only one caste now, the consumer caste, though it's still caste driven. But the consumer caste, ultimately is a powerful force. And I saw that, and I found that imagery of a billion, not hungry people to be fed and subsidized, but a billion hungry consumers, wanting to buy everything. And then it flashed on me like lightning. They were buying everything but air tickets. Somehow they never dreamt of air tickets. It was, even in my own company, helicopter company, the pilots, when they were going on vacation, they were going by train. They were not going by, by flights of only 3 airlines, Jet Airways and Indian Airlines and Sahara. And a return ticket for husband and wife from Bangalore to Delhi and back would cost 50,000 rupees, and it was a fixed fare. And that's when this idea came to me when I was in the Phoenix airport, when I was flying on a Southwest Airlines. There was a person sitting next to me, big guy, tattooed, and I could make out that he was from the working class. And I said, "What do you do?" And he said, "I'm a carpenter." He was eating a McDonald's burger, and he said, "I'm a carpenter." And I said, "How many times do you fly?" He said, I fly twice a year for taking a vacation. And I saw in the Phoenix airport a board that airport was handling 1,000 flights a day, one airport. And it was not the biggest of airports in the US. And then this idea again, flashed on me that that one airport was doing more flights than all our 40 airports put together in those days. We had 40 airports. All the 40 airports were doing less number of flights than one airport in America. And so I didn't need a McKinsey to tell me that I had to get a business analysis done. And the moment I came back and I said, "Oh my God," I said, this is a huge market here, which is untapped. And so I never asked how much does an aircraft cost or how much, what will be the way of starting, except that I was consumed by this idea. I was possessed, and I said, we can't go wrong. As long as I can create a business model which will compete with the trains and not with the other airlines. And I came back and announced that every Indian should fly, and gave the slogan, "Simply Fly."
So, that's an inspiring story so far, Mr. Gopinath. So, what I pick up from here, one more thing is that aviation was not something that you always wanted to do, but this was an idea which struck to you where, when we talk about that the moment there is demand, supply is something which should be created. And the person who creates the supply is an entrepreneur in the end because he's really solved a problem. And that's what you looked at doing. As an aviation entrepreneur as well, you did wear multiple hats, and starting an airline is not an easy task. What were the kind of challenges you had to overcome?
I think the challenges were many. The first was to sell the idea. I wanted everybody to buy into the dream. And as I said, I got the helicopter license during the Congress time, but the final launch was done during Mr. Devegowda's time, and now the BJP was in power in 2003 when I started. So I went to a minister, Rudy, who was then become the minister. And there was also Venkaiah Naidu, who was the BJP president. And I went and shared my dream. And I said, look, India, the penetration of aviation, the consumption of air tickets is less than 1%. And it is comparable to the sub-Saharan African countries. Even though we are a country galloping in the economy, the number of people who are flying was absolutely at the bottom of the countries in the world. So I told them that it's possible to build an airline where the tickets can be sold at half the price and we can still make it work. And they were not able to believe it. So I spent about almost an hour with Mr. Rudy, and I explained to him the concept of a low-cost airline where by using technology and putting the tickets directly in the hands of the consumer as against putting the tickets in the hands of the travel agent and the travel consolidators, I said straight away that brings down the cost of a ticket by 30%. And then by filling the plane as against, all the airlines were flying at 50% occupancy. Those three airlines, Indian Airlines and Sahara and Jet, they were flying at 50% occupancy. I said it is foolish because the other 50%, even if you give it at 500 rupees and 1,000 rupees, without losing whatever others are paying, So there is a smart way of managing the revenue where the rich people, the people who are in business, the people in government who have to go on a particular date, they will book a little early and pay a higher price. And people who are visiting friends and relatives, the small scale business people who are anyway taking 3 days to go by train, they can the, they don't have to get all these frills because these frills are a big waste of money. So I said, by removing all the frills and by filling the plane, because when you fill the plane, actually the revenue increases as against carrying it at 50%. So it's a question of on a total flight, as against getting, let's say 5 lakhs, we get 7 lakhs by filling the plane. And so they understood the concept. Then Mr. Rudy, very smartly he said, look, there's a lot of opposition and there is a lot of negativity being created by your competitors, and nobody believes in your dream. So can you come and talk to my DGCA and the Ministry of Civil Aviation? I'll get everybody together. I said, fine. So I went to, went to the ministry because, as against, my idea was that everybody should own this idea. That is the, one second. Suno? Sorry about that.
No problem.
Yeah. इसको बंद कर दो. Yeah. Sorry, I'm doing from the house
No
because
problem.
of the corona time. So, I think the most important thing in life is that whether it is your wife, your children, your colleagues, or the government, you have to make them buy into your dream. And it's really true that if you can dream it, you can do it. It is very, very, is what Walt Disney said. And so I wanted them to make it their dream. So I went to Delhi and I had assembled almost about 70 people. And I talked to them for about an hour and gave them the idea as to how, it's possible to give tickets at half the price and still be in profit. And I also gave them the data of some of the successful low-cost airlines abroad. But as you know, in India, the rules are different, the culture is different, the infrastructure is different. So I had to innovate using the Indian mind, from the Indian mud, as it were, using the native brains. And innovation was the key. And so I told them I can do it. And I also told them I want to give low fares, not only between cities and metros. I said, I had discovered during my helicopter days, because I also had small planes, that we had 500 airports in the country, airfields in the country. Some going back before Second World War, some built by some minister in some constituency because he was an aviation minister. Like Salem, for example, there was a fantastic airport where Boeing can land. Some aviation minister during Congress time had built it because he was the aviation minister from his constituency and unconnected. So there was a textile mill in Dindigal where I took Chief Minister S.M. Krishna and my pilot, and he didn't want to go by helicopter. He said, Captain, can you take me by a plane? And the nearest airport was Madurai. But again, from Madurai, he had to travel another 1.5 hours. So my pilot came with this map and said, Captain, there is a small airfield of an old British textile mill, which is now an Indian textile mill, which has got a small airfield. So he went there and I said, go and inspect it. He went and inspected it. He said, yes, there's some cows are grazing, but I can land here. So I said, put all the airfields on our map. And we found that there were 500 airfields. And that's true even today, which were unconnected. And so I told Mr. Rudy that, I want you to connect some airfields in small towns, because India is emerging from the small towns. So unless you link the rural India to the urban India, development will not take place. If you want equitable development, development in areas which are poor. Just having, incentives of tax breaks is not enough. You need connectivity. Connectivity is the key, not only of the train and the bus and the internet, but you need connectivity by air if you want to be globally competitive, because an investor wants to go to these airports in the morning and come back in the evening. And I said, connectivity is everything. And I said, you already have airports. So you don't have to acquire land. You have to just, spruce up the airport, put some Geruchina, and get these airports done. And so I said, just give me, initially 4 airports for my launch, and I'll demonstrate it. So we got Hubli and Belgaum and Vijayawada and Rajahmundry to start with. And our inaugural flight was to these cities. And actually on my inaugural flight, I had a fire with Chandrababu Naidu there and Venkaiah Naidu there, Minister Yudi. But finally, anyway, as someone said in our mythology, if you have a fire at any function, it's a good auspicious. That's what some of the people who said, Captain, don't give it up, because the competitors were trying to stop me. They said low-cost airlines is unsafe, and they wrote to the government. MPs were, who were in a way purchased by the, I don't want to use the word purchase. MPs who were obliged to the competitors in whatever manner, kept on writing letters to the ministry saying that, Air Deccan must be stopped. But, I was a man possessed, and I knew that, this is the time I should never give up. And my team was, with me. I had a fantastic team. And fortunately, every clerk, every government official at the lower level, mid level, higher level would give one more push to the file. And that was the key, because every one of them, instead of red tape, it became a red carpet. They wanted me to succeed. And if there were obstacles in my path, they would close the door and say, Captain, this is where the problem is, go and tackle it. This person is not doing it because there is some political pressure. Then I had to go and meet, the ministers of those days, whichever government, to see that, these obstacles are removed. Because if you say that I will start only when all obstacles are removed, when there are no obstacles in my way, no venture can ever be started.
Correct. And with this, the moment you started off, you took off. The initial years of Air Deccan were really strong. You achieved what you had to. However, in 2007, we did hit a pocket with competition coming in. Now, how did you deal with the entire situation, and how difficult a decision was it to merge Air Deccan with a Kingfisher?
Yeah, as you know, I did not have other industries to start an airline. So one was to hold on and slog and build the thing over a period of next 30, 40 years. But I also started my career late. And because I was in the army, I was in farming for 10 years after the army. And so I realized that, to fuel my dream, I need money. So instead of going to bank loans, I went for equity. Equity meant that I'll get diluted. So I did not mind that, because I said, it doesn't matter even if I hold, 10%. This is what happened eventually. But as long as I can enlarge the pie, enlarge the market, India has an inexhaustible, India has an inexhaustible pipeline of customers. There's a customer base. Whatever. Yeah, it has an inexhaustible customer pipeline, and that was my strength. So I raised almost 1,000 crores nearly before Mr. Evan Malia came in, because what the competitor was doing, Jet Airways and Indian Airlines, they were hand in glove in Sahara. They would put a flight just before my flight at much lower fare to put me out of the market. And so that once they remove me, they can, what is called as predatory pricing. In India, we don't have a predatory pricing law, which is strict like in US, where if competitors collude, they get imprisonment. So what they would do is they would put a flight just before my flight and increase it in the other flights because they were much larger. They would make it up by increasing marginally in the, let's say if Jet Airways had 400 flights and I had 10 flights, in my 10 flights, they would lower the price. And in the other 390 where I was not flying, they would increase the price marginally. So I said the one way to beat them was to, aggressive expansion. And the Deccan model was working. And it was something on the lines of Flipkart, what happened in Flipkart. So every day we were in the news and it caught on like fire, especially when I completely, changed the business model of booking. There was no fixed price. People who book early get it less. So I also put sprinkled 1 rupee tickets and 500 rupee tickets and 1,000 rupee tickets. So because as an entrepreneur, it's not enough to create a product, as you I think yourself referred. You need to also create the societal shift in consumer behavior. Because the customer always doesn't see, though he's always right, he doesn't see what an entrepreneur sees. And what others also many times they do not see. They say vision is the art of seeing the invisible. It's a paradox. Vision is to see the invisible. And what is vision? Vision is the future. So an entrepreneur sees the future and sees a market which did not exist, sees a product which he is creating, and it did not be inventing a new jet engine or inventing a new because that happens. That kind of revolutions happens once in 50 years. Somebody inventing a steam engine, an automobile engine, electricity. But also 90% of the innovations are how the businessman puts together the various available technologies and reconfigures it and creates a new product with the existing technology where the technology did not have a product. So you bring in different technologies and create a new model. Low-cost airline was on that. So I was seeing something which my competitors were not seeing. And I saw in India where hundreds of thousands of people will keep coming and filling the plane. So I expanded, and unfortunately, the market perception about India was growing at that time. Investors wanted to come in. Airbus had not sold a single Airbus, so they all went out to help me, and I raised equity from private equity, and that gave me the money. And I put all that money in expanding. So every month I was importing an aircraft, and every month I was opening a new airport like Jamshedpur, like Dharamshala, Kulu, Manali, Simla, Pathankot, Gwalior, Jabalpur, Tuticorin. So I kept adding new airports, and that sucked in a lot of money. But that also got these other airlines, back on their back foot. And seeing the success of Deccan, a lot of people jumped in, from SpiceJet to Kingfisher to SpiceJet, Kingfisher. There was another Prime Air, there was a Raj Air, there was Indigo, and all of them, one on the back of the other. So it created an excess capacity. At the same time, fuel, which was $20 a barrel when I started the airline, went up to $150 a barrel. And these new airports were not there. And we had a huge deficiency of resources. We didn't have parking spaces. We didn't have enough number of pilots. There was a huge, and we were still losing money. And, and, but the stock market was rising. So my private equity people, they know they are short-sighted. They don't share the same vision as an entrepreneur. But of course, but I also had to respect it because they had put the money, and they wanted me to bring in an investor. And a lot of investors, they put out a market, they're ready to sell. They said, Captain, either you buy our shares or you allow us to bring in a investor. And so word got around that I was looking for investors because my private equity people were putting pressure on me, and they wanted to cash out because they thought, there may be bankruptcies, and they wanted to get their money. And I had an agreement with them that they will get 3 times their investment in 5 years. So he said, Captain, your ego is preventing you from bringing in investors. So that's how there was pressure. So the Anil Ambani contacted me that time. Some other foreign companies like Indigo Partners and TPG contacted me. And then Vijay Mallya came into the scene. And Vijay Mallya had Airbus, he had ATR, he was from Bangalore, and he had been chasing me for the last 4 years, and I had said no the first time. And we agreed, but it was not to merge, it was for him to invest, and he would run his Kingfisher in his luxurious style, and Air Deccan would be a separate low-cost entity. And that was the arrangement and agreement. But after he invested and took over the control, unfortunately, I won't say he reneged on his commitment. I would say that he believed that his model was a better model than mine. So I had a huge disagreement. I fought with him on the board. I said, you can't do this, not because of my agreement, which is of course one thing, but I said, you are getting into a model which has never worked in any country. And it will not work here except probably an exception like Singapore Airlines, which is a monopoly there. So you are making a big mistake. Don't change the model. Keep the model and brand distinct, because by merging, you're removing the brand blurring. So he made it like Kingfisher Red, and as Prahlad and Michael Porter called, getting stuck in the middle. The brand was neither luxury brand, nor was it a low-cost brand. And so I said, you are going to cannibalize passengers from Kingfisher to Kingfisher Red. And from Kingfisher Red, they'll go to Indigo, because Kingfisher Red will be a costlier brand than Indigo, costlier brand than Spice. And that's exactly what happened. And because it was competing with the Kingfisher airline timings, he removed all the Air Deccan timings. We had fantastic timings. We could go at 5 o'clock in the morning to Delhi, and I had created the model in such a manner that a very, very low middle class guy, who, if he had to go to Delhi, he could go in the morning and return in the evening if it is for a business purpose to go to Delhi for garment work, so that he didn't have to spend time in the hotel. And all that fundamental model he changed, and that was the beginning of the collapse of Kingfisher, if I could say so.
Absolutely, and that's something which everyone feels really sad about. And then with this, Mr. Gopinath, Simply Fly, that's something which you've written, and you have Surarai Potru, which will be releasing as well, which is pretty much based on your book. Tell us more, if what is Surarai Potru about? That's something which is exactly based on your book, and what motivated you to write this book?
I wrote the book because a lot of people were calling me and said, Captain, you must capture the Deccan story, because it's a story of courage over adversity, or hope over despair. How hope is wins you and not despair. Losing yourself in hopelessness is not the answer to anything. You have to lose yourself in action. And I used to tell a story, even when I used to go and give talks in IITs and IIMs and and foreign universities. Two frogs, fell into yogurt into curds, and one, started praying to all the deities, and the other frog was, said, the only thing I know is to keep swimming. So I'll keep swimming, I will not stop swimming. So the one which was praying, drowned eventually. The ones, because nobody came to help, when you are praying. Whereas the other frog, it was non-stop, paddling, and suddenly it discovered a ball, forming it underneath his feet in the yogurt, in the curds, and it was a ball of butter, and it jumped out of the vessel and saved itself. So the story here is that you can't give up. You are not a failure when you fail. You are a failure when you quit. And for entrepreneurs, what you need is, in addition to dreaming big, that dream must be combined with adventure, venture, and that's not enough. Along with that, you need persistence and perseverance. Perseverance is more important than talent. A lot of people with talent, but they'll take you nowhere if you don't persevere. You have to have that madness to not give up. And along with that, you need enthusiasm, perennially enthusiasm. You have to be enthusiastic every day when you get up, and do your work, continued enthusiasm. But last and most important, I think entrepreneur requires optimism. Optimism that, this world is good. Optimism that believing in your dream will make your dream come true. A farmer is a great example. That's where my optimism came from. Because of all the hardships of farmers, barring a few who borrow money and sometimes die out of frustration, committing suicide when they can't pay back the money lender. What does a farmer teach you? He said, in spite of everything, last year's crop loss, last year's drought, last year's floods, he gets up in the morning, puts his shoulder to the plow, and sings and plows, not disbelieving the sun will rise. He does not doubt that the sun will rise. He does not doubt that this year it will not rain. He does not doubt that again there will be floods. He does not doubt that crops will get destroyed. Crops will not, the seed will sprout. So that optimism that the floods will not repeat, the optimism that crops will not get destroyed, that's what makes him come and plow the field every year, every day. He doesn't give up. So entrepreneurs need to have that optimism. And that's the reason I wrote this story, because the publishers came to me and family HarperCollins said, you must write this story. And I kept it, I kept in mind the rural educated youth who are without jobs, and you can see it because all of them are looking for jobs, especially in government jobs, in those places where in government jobs you get an extra income apart from the prestige. It could be a low-paying job, but you want to take that rather than. I remember once when I was a secretary of a college, the father-in-law brought a guy who was an MA in economics and commerce, and said, we will give you 1 lakh rupees. Can you give him a job as a lecturer? I said, look, he's a guy who's got economics and commerce masters. Give that 1 lakh to him and make him start a business. You don't need to start with big money. You start small. And I remember in my village, one guy who used to sell milk, brought his son and said, can you get him a job as a RTO inspector? Because as an RTO inspector, you can make a lot of money, in many ways, or in a government job, you make money in different ways. I said, no. I said, you make him an entrepreneur. So a lot of them I changed. So I thought, a book, which will inspire the youth and not, fall into, sorrow, fall into, hopelessness and complain, because, all the time complaining, there is corruption, that, you must know somebody. If you don't know somebody, you will not be able to get anything. So you give up trying, you give up working hard, you give up dreaming, because you think only corruption will work, and since you don't have money, you will not be able to succeed. I wrote this story keeping them in mind, that of course corruption is there, but cynicism and skepticism is slow suicide. No, you have to be cheerful and optimistic, and believe in your dream, most important. Because if you don't believe in your dream, why will the investor put money in your dream?
Correct.
So you have to get started with whatever you have. Like when we started the helicopter company, Captain Samuel and I, we had a small apartment, very small apartment, which would not even buy a blade of a helicopter. So, but both of us, put that and pledged it to the bank, and to start the helicopter company. So that's what investors are looking for. They want to see how committed and how energetic is the team.
Absolutely. And I think that's an inspiring story, Captain Gopinath, because now you've seen a lot of budding entrepreneurs that are trying to take the leap. Probably probably 2 decades ago, you didn't really have these many entrepreneurs who were ready to take up risks like these, be persistent about it, have the patience to achieve something. But congratulations on this journey that you've achieved so far, and hoping for more successes in your lifespan from here on as well.
Yeah.
Congratulations once again.
Yeah. Since you asked about the movie, I can tell you one sentence.
Yes, tell me.
Yeah. So, when the book became a big bestseller, Mr. Abdul Kalam, the president, gave the foreword. And when I went to meet him, and he said, "Look, you do not know that I was once in deep trouble, and I was able to get a Deccan ticket because my secretary contacted you. He had to fly somewhere, and he had just laid down office, and so he gave a great tribute to my book, and said that this is a must textbook for schools and colleges and management institutes." So when the book became a bestseller, people approached me, and in fact, Girish Karnad approached me and said, "Captain, just 2 years before he died, I read your book. It's got great cinematic value. It's a great story of it's got rural village life. It's got army life. It's got a war. It's got aviation. So you must give the film rights to somebody to make a movie." I was a bit reluctant because sometimes, I didn't want to see myself, I thought maybe Bollywood may make it flippant, and may not be true to the book. But finally, Gunit Mwanga approached me, the famous director who had become famous by now, who had made Lunchbox and Gangs of Wasseypur and Haram Khor and Masan. She approached me and said, "Captain, Sudha Kongara, who's read your book, she has brought a story to me. Please give me the film rights, because we want to tell this story to inspire people. It's a great story." And she said her first flight with her mother was on an Air Deccan flight from Chandigarh to Delhi, and Delhi to Bombay.
Correct.
Chandigarh to Bombay. So we traveled on a 500 rupee ticket, and so I know how exactly it feels. So please give us the film rights. And then she said that she's going to take some liberties in making it a bit more dramatized and fictionalized, so that the masses will see it in the villages. And that's how I gave the film rights to her. And I saw the movie last night. It is heavily fictionalized, but it has been true to the essence of the book, capturing the triumph of courage and perseverance when you're faced with odds. And they also showed my wife Bhargavi, because normally male-centric movies, which will not show the female characters well. So whereas in this case, though it is a Surya movie, the story of my wife has been portrayed by Aparna. The director is Sudha, and she has portrayed my wife in her own right as an entrepreneur, very feisty, very self-assured, soft but strong. It's a great tribute to women, that they need not be secondary, even if it is a small enterprise they are doing. They should stand on their own feet, and they should differ with their husbands, and you can be a strength to the husband, but don't be a subordinate. And that has been very nicely captured. And they also made the film of a Dalit entrepreneur, rather than an entrepreneur from a upper caste, which is a good thing.
So I think we will be looking forward to watch the movie as well, which is Suraraipo Through, meaning praise the brave. And hopefully during Diwali and New Year's, that's what we're going to spend watching. But thank you so much, Captain Gopinath, for joining us on the show. It was a pleasure to speak to you, hear about your journey from the horse's mouth itself. And overall, if you go to see, a huge inspiration to all the budding entrepreneurs which are coming up in India, because that's one of the core necessities that we have in these unprecedented times as well. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining in. Stay safe and happy Diwali and happy New Year to you and your family as well. Thank you.